We live in a world of many, many racing games, some massive, some that fly under the radar, but sadly, some never make it to the finish line. They sadly get cancelled. And today, that's exactly what I want to look at. The games that could have been, that really should have been, but got cancelled. So welcome to the weird world of cancelled racing games. Okay, so there are some ground rules that we need to set, because as I'm sure you can imagine, there are quite a lot of cancelled racing games. Just check out Unseen64's site for it. My god, there's like 30 pages of cancelled games. Probably more, actually, but that's all in the racing genre. So no, we're not looking at every single cancelled racing video game ever made, because otherwise I'd be here until my 30s. Anyway, of course, because I also love tier lists, we're going to rank some of these cancelled racing games into a tier list of how sad I am that they were cancelled. So we're going to go from very sad to not particularly bothered. Which sounds kind of harsh, but it's probably just going to be racing games that didn't interest me very much. Anyway, that's enough yapping about the rules. Let's jump into some cancelled racing games. Alright, so starting off strong, I hope you guys have got your Corona beers and family together, because we are going to be looking at The Fast and the Furious for the PlayStation 2. So this game was set to release in 2003, I think, and was being developed by Genki, who were known for the Shutoko Battle series, or also known as Tokyo Extreme Racer. Now, not much is known about the game. We've got a couple of trailers and a bit of gameplay footage, courtesy of IGN, thanks guys. But aside from this, we don't really know, but it looks like it'll be a mix of Tokyo Extreme Racer and games like Midnight Club. Apparently it was also set to be based on the first and second movie. Now interestingly, there was actually a trailer for this as a bonus feature on the DVD release of Too Fast, Too Furious, so that does make sense. And the cover art for the game, although it's unknown if this is real or fan-made, does have Brian's skyline from the second film on there. I'm guessing the gameplay would have probably seen you starting out as a basic street racer and then working your way up, earning reputation, you know, a standard street racer setup, and it was definitely set to include a variety of licensed cars and brands, as there are in the films. So why was the game cancelled? Well, I have found various conflicting answers to this, and I don't really know which one to believe. Most sources say it's pretty much unknown, as there was no official reason, with most believing that the developer was unsatisfied as the graphics were lackluster compared to NFS Underground, which was releasing that same year. However, the cancelled games fandom wiki quotes a much more interesting reason. Supposedly, just after the game had finished development, Vivendi Universal, the publisher, discovered that Genki had developed another street racing series, you know, the Tokyo Extreme Racer series, something they definitely weren't hiding, and supposedly they were furious that Genki had stolen the idea, despite the whole series had predated the films, and then demanded they must stop making this series and surrender the rights to Universal. Obviously they didn't do that, and then the game was cancelled. Now whether or not that's true, who knows? I've not been able to find any source verifying that information. It's quite an interesting tale to say the least, but I don't know whether or not that's true. So anyway, let's rank it on this tier list. So I've got 4 different categories here. We've got not bothered, meh, quite sad, and the big sad. Now, to be honest, we all know that the Fast and Furious video games don't really have a good reputation, and whilst I do really enjoy the films, even though some of them aren't that great, I don't know, I feel like this would have just been alright, so I think this is just going to be meh. Meh, would have been fun, I think, but it also probably wouldn't have been that good either. Now, just quickly before we move on to our next game, please consider hitting the like button as it really helps out, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing as well. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so I've already got blurry eyes talking about this one. See what I did there? Yeah, this is Blur 2. I'm sure of all the cancelled racing games, this is probably the one you've actually heard of. So, Blur was a 2010 arcade combat racing title that was, to be honest, really, really fun. It was developed by Bizarre Creations, as in the Project Gotham Racing guys, who were just fantastic at making racing games. Oh, and also Boom Boom Rocket, that game slaps, go check that out. Anyway, Blur 2 was basically just set to expand on the original game, which was already great, with a new 3D engine and some more interactive tracks. such as using rainstorms and avalanches to spice up the races, and adding a new ability to race sideways on buildings. That sounds insane. A playable prototype of Blur 2 was leaked online back in January 2020, so thankfully we do actually have some footage from what the game could have been, but obviously this was still early on in the game's development. Sticking with what Bizarre Creations were good at, there were going to be a lot of tracks based on real-world locations, ranging from Dubai, Detroit, North Africa, all the way to Liverpool. Oh man, that would have been interesting. So why was it cancelled? Well, Activision are an evil corporation, as I'm sure many of you already know, but the official statement reads as follows. Over the past 3 years since our purchase of Bizarre Creations, the fundamentals of the racing genre have changed significantly. They hadn't. Although we made a substantial investment in creating a new IP, Blur, it did not find a commercial audience. Bizarre is a very talented team of developers, however, because of the broader economic factors impacting the market, we are exploring our options regarding the future of the studio, including a potential sale of the business. Which, they ended up just shutting them down. Yep, great job Activision, you're killing it. Yay. Anyway, let's rank the game before I get too upset about this. So this is gonna go straight into the big sad. Because not only did we never get Blur 2, they shut down the whole studio of these fantastically talented developers. I hate Activision, man. Okay, so moving on, we've got something that's quite meaty, because this is Stunt Pigs. This was a game that was in development all the way back in 2001 to 2002. It's not exactly clear just when it was, but it was in development for the Nintendo GameCube, so that should give you an idea of the time frame we're talking about here. You would drive around the city as a stunt pig, performing some stunts, collecting bonuses, and showing off your skills. It was basically kind of like a Hollywood blockbuster movie stunt driving game where you played as a pig. With a very stylish look to it, the kind of cel-shaded, cartoony vibe that I love to see in games, it honestly looks like it would have been a blast. It was being developed by M4 Limited, a fairly unknown studio that was mostly known for Resident Evil Gaiden, the Game Boy Resident Evil. Now, interestingly, this game was never actually officially announced, but back in 2014, some collectors came across an old M4 DVD that had this footage on there. Now, interestingly, M4 never actually released an original title. They only released licensed games, although they did have 3 original titles in development, with Stunt Pigs being one of them. Now, I'm assuming the reason for cancellation is probably that the company just went under, and because of that, sadly took the games down with it. So let's rank it. I think this game would have been a lot of fun, but sadly, well, we'll never know. So I think for this, I am quite sad. So next up, we've got something that would have been a little bit more brick-built. This would have been LEGO Racers the video game. Not to be confused with the original LEGO Racers, LEGO Racers 2, or the LEGO Drone Racers games. Now, we learnt of this game's existence in a very unusual way. In late 2008, the next year's LEGO sets were released a little bit early, which is actually quite a normal thing for LEGO sets. Anyway, what was less normal was that there was an advert for LEGO Racers the video game on top of a LEGO Racers box of a set. It didn't have a release date or coming soon, it just said new. Now, for years, that was all that we had to go off. There's one screenshot of the LEGO Racers DS artwork cover that was on top of a box. But in 2013, a developer from Firebrand Games, a company behind many handheld racing games, posted some samples of work that he'd done on the game, including rendered models, which you are seeing now. Now, the devs said the game was for the Nintendo DS, but the screenshots and, well, models look higher quality than what the DS could handle, and the resolution was actually standard for Wii games. And seeing as this was Firebrand, that would be pretty likely that it was going to be on the Wii and the DS, but that is literally all the footage we have of this game. It's unclear how far along in development it was, what was going on, why it was cancelled. That's it. It's a bit of a mystery, to be honest. But hey, I'm sure if it ever came out, it probably would have been better than LEGO 2K Drive. Anyway, I think I am quite sad about this. I love a good LEGO video game, and I'm sure this would have been a lot of fun. Okay, so next up, let's get down to monkey business, because this would have been Diddy Kong Racing Adventure. This would have been a follow-up to Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64, but not developed by Rare because at this point they had been purchased by Microsoft. Now, thanks to YouTuber P2P Online, and the footage you're seeing now is from that channel, we know that the game was pitched to Nintendo around April 2004, but there's no official date of this. Anyway, it's a follow-up to the previous game, and it had to do with WizPig coming back for a rematch with Diddy Kong and friends. Presumably some of those friends would not be present, such as Banjo and Conker, because Rare would have definitely had those rights. Even just based on the pitch footage that we have here, it does look like it would have been a lot of fun. Supposedly you would have had to have gone through 16 villages, each with 3 courses, to eventually face WizPig again at the end. Now that sounds like a lot of tracks, and each village was supposedly themed after a Donkey Kong Country character, so I guess at least they're Nintendo characters and not Rare ones. Supposedly you were going to be able to drive quads, planes, buggies, jet skis, and hover bikes, with each of these being able to be customized and upgraded, which sounds very, very cool. Sadly, we can't find the specific reason that this game never went further into development, but presumably Nintendo just weren't too impressed by the tech demo. If you are interested in learning more about Diddy Kong Racing Adventure, go and watch the P2P Online video about it, because they go much more in depth than I have. Anyway, I'm going to say that I am the big sad that this never reached further development, because man, Diddy Kong Racing is such a good game, and I love a good Nintendo racing game. So for our next game, we're heading into the water, because this would have been H2 Overdrive. Not to be confused with the arcade-only H2 Overdrive, which was developed by the guys who made the original Hydro Thunder. This was going to be an early 2000s PS2 release by a developer called Visiware, and the game was set to be published by Crave Entertainment. You would have been racing powerboats across various different rivers, lakes, and apparently even the surface of Mars. The game was set to have 7 different modes, ranging from single race, championships, duels, checkpoint, and apparently cat and mouse. To be fair, it does actually look like it would have been quite fun, and those game modes do sound quite entertaining. Now the question is, why was this game cancelled? Well, would you believe there's no official reason, but likely it's down to some issues with the publisher, or just due to some quality concerns. I'm going to say it's most likely down to publisher issues, because looking at this released footage here, it looks to be quite good quality. Anyway, let's rank it. So, to be honest, this kind of racing game doesn't really interest me so much. It does look cool, don't get me wrong, but I think personally, I'm not too bothered. Anyway, let's move on to our final game of this video. So, for our final game of the video, we're looking at something that was set to be a little bit more realistic than some of the other games we've looked at today, because this would have been Racer X. This was a driving championship kind of game in development by Boss Game Studios that was going to be coming out for the original Xbox. These guys were the creators of Top Gear Rally, by the way. So the footage you are seeing on screen now is from Racer X, and having looked at this footage, the lead programmer has actually commented on the original video, kind of confirming sort of what happened. So this was in development before the original Xbox had launched, with the intention of it kind of being like a second-party launch title. Obviously, as we all know, Bizarre Creations ended up getting that spot with Project Gotham Racing, with Microsoft publishing that. And of course, the programmer couldn't go into detail in that comment as to why that happened, but that is what happened. The game would have had licensed cars, real-world locations. It was essentially kind of Forza before Forza. And supposedly many people from this studio actually went on to work on Forza, including the lead car designer. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Project Gotham Racing series. In fact, I'm working on a video at the moment about one of those games, and I also love the Forza Motorsport series, but I think this would have been insanely cool to see this one get its chance to shine. So for me, I think this game is going to give me the big sad. So that takes us to the end of our look at just a few cancelled racing games. Now, there are many, many more that we can look at, so if you want to see a part 2, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.